Good evening. Welcome to the evening transmission, Sounds Delhi on Rajdhani channel of All India Radio, medium wave 50.5 meters corresponding to 6 NSS kilohertz. Please stand by. This is All the Radio. Please listen now to the comments from the press.
This is All India Radio. You will now hear comments from the press. The Asian Age in its editorial title, Constitutional Logjam Develops in Karnataka, writes, the serious political crisis in Karnataka assumed the form of a constitutional logjam on Friday thanks to the governor and the Supreme Court. The opposition BJP, especially its overly ambitious state chief B.S. Yediyurappa, saw in the fragile political equation within the ruling combine an opportunity to seize power. The method it employed was to spirit away to Mumbai disgruntled ruling side MLAs to give effect to Operation Lotus Mark II. Variants of this method have been successfully used by the BJP in many states in recent times. Operation Topple, mounted in Karnataka, was a purely political game, even though Mr. Yediyurappa was seeking to make a mockery of the anti-defection law by inducing large-scale defections of MLAs, since it is much easier to catch out individual defectors and punish them constitutionally. This political problem could have sorted itself out politically. The Supreme Court should have avoided being sucked into a political quagmire. Instead, a three-member bench led by Chief Justice Ranjan Gogoi practically gave carte blanche to intending ruling side defectors, misleadingly labelled dissidents, through its interim order of July 17. Perhaps taking a cue from the court and BJP politicians, the governor informed the CM, although the latter had already initiated trust vote proceedings, that he may have lost the confidence of the House. It is to be hoped that a peaked governor will not go down the slippery slope of recommending President's rule while a trust motion is under debate. The Pioneer, in its editorial title, Karnataka Imbroglio, says, there seems to be no end to the Karnataka imbroglio, which is holding democracy to ransom and reducing it to a power fiefdom of the political class in the state, wholly disconnected from what its people want. Shedding even the pretense of constitutional propriety, the ruling Congress Janata Dal Secular Alliance and the opposition Bharatiya Janata Party BJP have turned governance into an attrition of avarice and naked greed, both trying to steal each other's numbers to keep the top chair. Corruption has fouled the image of both national parties in the state and made them both appear as eager hosts of creepy parasites. For though Karnataka is one of our highest GDP states in the country, the fact remains that the past year of policy paralysis has meant that key challenges have not been addressed, primary among them being that of crumbling infrastructure and an immediate dispersion of industries, the Kaveri waters, and the very real problem of urban regeneration and remodeling because of scarcity of precious resource. The Congress has had to bear the worst burden of the Kumaraswamy government's non-performance. The Congress High Command's intervention in the deal and setting up a rival in D. Shivakumar as its face has only heightened dissensions within the party and fractured its ranks. This is a reason why its legislators are deserting like rats. The Statesman, in its editorial title, Chasing the Moon, says, 58 years after Yuri Gagarin, the Soviet cosmonaut, became the first human being to orbit the Earth, and 50 years after the American astronaut Neil Armstrong landed on the Moon, the Indian Space Research Organization, amidst much hoopla and in the presence of President Ramnath Kovind and more than 5,000 invited spectators, scheduled the launch of India's second lunar mission, Chandrayaan-2, at 2:50 a.m. on 15 July. 56 minutes before the scheduled liftoff, it was aborted due to a snag in its cryogenic engine. Success and failure is common to all spacefaring nations, but the failure of Chandrayaan-2 to take off as scheduled is a serious letdown to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's last Independence Day speech from the ramparts of the Red Fort in Delhi, announcing that the nation will have its first manned space mission in 2022, the 75th year of independence. On hearing the Prime Minister's last Independence Day speech, G. Madhavan Nair, former ISRO chairman, said, India has to go miles and miles before thinking of a manned space flight. The global standard of man rating is extremely stringent. 2 feet still remain elusive to ISRO. Manned mission to space and the dream of establishing a permanent hub in space like the International Space Station, owned and operated by a consortium of nations including the USA, Russia, Japan, Canada and the European Space Agency. ISRO will no doubt achieve these 2 feats, but in its own time and not under any pressure nor for any partisan gain. The Pioneer, in its editorial title 50 Years On, says, when the giant Saturn V rocket lifted off Cape Canaveral on a balmy July evening on America's east coast, it carried 3 men in a small capsule, at least when compared to another celestial object, our moon. There is a reason that Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins are among the most famous men, not just of their generation but among mankind. The missions to the moon cost unimaginable sums of money. Governments today would balk at spending such amounts, but they have had a lasting impact